Hi all, my name is Vibhuti Sumit. Today let us see how to implement REST API using WSO2 Enterprise Integrator. This is typical integration scenario where you can see in middle we are having enterprise service bus which acts as a middleware. Will be taking the message from the client and will be transforming message as per the requirement using the mediators and connectors. And you see it is an application, business application or mobile application which will be using from client side to send the request and get the response data. And it is a backend system which will be exposing the services, like it may be developed in Java or any other technology. In our case, we are going to create a REST service using WSO2 Enterprise Integrator. Here we see we are using Postman as our REST client, which will be sending the request and getting the response, and FetchStore as our backend system, which will be giving the response. Like it is a Swagger file, we will be sending a request to get request or post request, and we'll be sending the response. And in between this, we will be using WSO2 Enterprise Integrator as our enterprise service bus, which will receive the request from the postman and transform the message as per the requirement using the mediators and sequences and templates and everything, and invokes the backend system FetchStore and take the response from the backend again and again, transform the message as per the sequence. Then afterwards reply back to the REST client, which is a postman. And now we will develop using one REST API using Integration Studio. Here you see this is in WSO2 Integration Studio where you can develop an APIs. It is basically an IDE. Click on File, New, Integration Project, where you can give the API name as I'm giving store demo API, and it will be creating ESB configs and composite explorer both. And click on next, finish. If you see, it will be creating an application. In this one we will be having composite explorer and configs. In configs we will be having synapse config which will be containing multiple folders for different scenarios. Like for creating an API, we need to click on API, new, REST API. And here you see there are three, which first one is we can create a new API artifact using giving the name. Second one is we can generate a artifact using Swagger definition. Other one, we can import the artifact which was previously developed. I'm creating new, and I will be giving the name store data, and I'm giving the context as so store. If you see our Swagger definition, this is the FetchStore backend Swagger definitions which will be giving, and this is the one. If you see, the context will be store and the URI template is order and URI param is order ID. So I will be defining as same as like this. So I will be giving the context. For version type, you can give the version if you want to give any version to your URL. I'm not giving anything at present. Click on finish. Once you finish, it will create an API which will be containing a resource. In one API, we can create multiple resources. Okay. In one resource, we will be having an in sequence, an out sequence, and fall sequence. If you see in a resource tab in XML format, you can find in resource we will be having in sequence, out sequence, and fall sequence. I'm going to the design tab, and if you want to create multiple APIs, we can drag and drop the API resource from there to here, and we can create two resources, and we can name it as per the requirement. Now I'm using one resource, and here if you see the mediators, which are building blocks of integration flow in Enterprise Integrator, which will be mainly used in between the functional sequences. And if you see here, we will be having the sequence like it is a combination of mediators which will be created by using mediators for a particular sequence for a requested operation, and we will be having using templates for a template for any other sequence where we can use it for our purpose and structured format, like we will be using for logging purpose. I will explain it in further. And next I will be creating one process using this scenario. First of all, I will be dragging one property mediator. First of all, I will be creating setting the resource. In resource, we need to set up URL template where I said right, we will be giving this order ID as same as format. I will be giving this one over here, order and order ID, and I'm getting using the protocol as HTTP, and the request will be get request. This is the resource setting, and once I set the resource, I will be taking the property to set the incoming URI param order ID. So I'm giving the name to it, URI dot var dot param, sorry, order ID, and it is an integer, not a string, so I'm giving it as integer. And for expression, we need to give expression function, and we need to give expression. For getting the data from the URI param, we need to write get property of URI dot dot var dot order ID. So it will set the order ID, input order ID here, URI var order ID, so that we can use it in further. And I will be calling backend system. I'm creating a small sequence so that for time being it will be much more not lagging. After that, I will explain my developer sequence. I will be using HTTP endpoint. Send is used for sending the response to the backend system, request to the backend system, and I will be using HTTP endpoint. For URI template, I will be using the Swagger definition, where if you see here, we will be having Swagger. We are going to use order, right? If you see, if you want to, um, this is the where we will be triggering out. This will be the request. So I'm using the request as like this for our sequence, and we have already storing order ID from the request. So we need to give the name URI dot var dot order ID, so that it will take the order ID from the request, and it in sequence is completed. Once we complete the in sequence, we will sending the request. We will get the response from the client. After that, we will use using the property mediator to set the message mediation. Like if you I want to, if you are getting any request from, we don't know what we will get from request as a response, right? So we want to convert any response to a JSON format. So I'm creating the message type, and I'm setting as scope as access to, and giving the expression as application or JSON. So it will convert it into JSON format, and I'm using one enrich mediator for storing the response payload to send it back to the client, REST client. You see, yeah, if you see here, it will be having enrich mediator. We will be using the enrich mediator. Enrich mediator, we need to set type as body. We are taking all the body, right? So, and we are action is replace, and we will be typing as property. We need to give the property. The property name will be payload. I will be taking the payload, and the name the name for this enrich mediator, saving the payload. We save the payload and we will be sending it back to the REST client, this Postman. That's it, and we need to save it, and once you have saved it, we can run it from here, new run on micro integrator, and I will be running this API config. You can see the logs in the console once it started running in the micro integrator. This is the small flow so that we can reduce the time limit for the video, and I will be showing the another code which I have developed using different operations. Like if you see here, I have developed another API. In this one, I have used multiple mediators to logging purpose and everything, so that it will be good enhancement for our code. Once I show you this code, I will be running this all operations at a time. I said right, we can use two resources in one API. So if you see here, okay, our REST client was up. Okay, if you see our REST client was up, we can go and take the endpoint from this runtime service, and we will be going to the Postman, giving the order ID over here. I think the backend system was not working fine. That's the reason we are getting the order not found from the system. So I will run the application which I have developed for using different scenarios. Like if you see here, I have used multiple operations like using call template for logging purpose, logging the sequences, and I have used, I will show you. I have used mandatory parameter check where it will check the mandatory data. Like if you are sending an JSON payload, if you want to check the mandatory fields, we can check using this template. And I'm using the log TP where we can log the data like debug log, error log, whatever the logs you want to debug it, we can debug over here using the log TP template. And I'm also using error sequence, where we can catch the error. If there is any backend error or something error, we can write it over here and get back to the client. In one sequence, I will show you. I'm using the filter. If you see the filter, I'm using 200 HTTP code. If it is 200 success, I will be sending the correct response. Otherwise, I will be giving the sequence to the error handler so that it can send error message. And I'm using the payload factory for transforming the messages. You see here, I'm using the JSON data. Using the arguments, I will be transforming the messages. Whatever structure you want, we can convert using the payload factory. Okay. Uh, I will start this application. Run on micro integrator. Yes, I will run. You see, it will run in 2 to 3 minutes. It will take 2 to 3 minutes. And it will take some more time, like 1 to 2 minutes to up the sensor. Yeah, it went good. And let's see the runtime service. You see the runtime services, the endpoints are up like you see the get request for order ID and the post order and the get inventory data and the delete request we all have up. So first of all I will be using the request post request. I have already set up a request data JSON payload which will be sending. Once we send the request, we will be getting back the response. You see the order ID. If you want to change any ID, we will be sending the data and we will get back the response. We can transform the message as per our requirement. So I'm like this. And you see here, we got logs. I said right, I'm using much more call template and logging purpose. So if you see, order ID initiated, order ID started, the calling the backend system started, calling the backend system ended, and we will be logging the JSON payload which we are sending. And after the completion of the flow, it will tell everything in the logs. We can log it using the different mediators, and we can see. And now I will run another operation. You see this get request inventory data. I am using get inventory data, get inventory, and send. Send. See, we will get the inventory data, and if you see here, we will be getting the logs. See, store inventory getting started, calling the store order details started, the debug log, and the JSON payload which we are getting from the backend, it will be logging over here. We can, and inventory ended. We can log everything using this mediators. And another one which will be we are doing is delete operation. Copy the delete one. We will be going to give the delete, and I'm giving the order. It won't delete because it is a Swagger file, right? So we don't have perfect backend system. So for demo purpose, I'm showing like this. It won't delete at present, but it will be accepted. If you see the client console, it will also show same backend system. Everything will be deleted. And but for now, this is the scenario. And thank you all for joining the. Thank you so much.